Hello to all the wonderful people watching us again. So it's me today, Claudia from Nourish by Claudia, nutrition and dietetic clinician, and the lovely Jacqueline Byrne from Wings and Quill, clinical psychotherapist specialized in eating disorder and disorder eating behaviors. And today we are here to discuss the top reasons why women don't recover from hypothalamic amenorrhea and eating disorders. And on the title, I wrote down the top 5 reasons because I have 200 reasons in the back of my mind, but I thought it's better if we pick at least 5 of them just to keep this live short and sweet so that women can get something out of it. So first of all, welcome, Jacqueline. I'm so happy that you're here also this month. How are you doing? How is everything been going on your side?
I'm very well, Claudia. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation because we talk a lot about the flip side of what's needed and what's required going forward. And I think the opposite side of the coin is going to be really beneficial to talk through as to what actually keeps us stuck. And I'm so curious if the women listening today resonate with what we talk about, can see elements of those in their journey, even if some of those were things they've been able to overcome, but see how they were particular areas of stuckness and difficulty. So I'm really keen to move forward in this conversation. And it's always so lovely to see you and get the chance to talk with you again.
Likewise. And you know what? We haven't even brainstormed for this live. So let's simply
totally raw.
And yeah. I'm pretty sure that we are going to agree on so many levels here. If you don't mind, I'm going to get started with one of my, let's call it favorite one, is being in denial and the self-sabotage that comes with it, the feeling of not being sick enough. And maybe some of these women that have started their own journey, knowing that not having a period or having very restricted behaviors around food and training is not, let's say, normal or how they would like to live their life. And they get to a place where life becomes all of a sudden bearable because they manage to challenge a few of the behaviors and they manage to sleep a little bit better and they improve their health in general. But yet they still have a long way to go, but they decide to settle where they are. And that comes from a place of not truly believing that they deserve to recover and also believing that they're sick enough. And there is actually a beautiful book that I read some time ago and I recommend to all of you out there is Sick Enough from Jennifer Godiani. I don't know if you heard about it. Yeah, and it talks exactly about this this feeling of, yes, being sick, but not feeling it. Have you experienced this with your patient, Jacqueline?
It's one of the most dangerous parts of eating disorders, and it can be a big part of an HA journey as well, especially with exercise compulsion being part of the picture. It's really interesting that you say that. As soon as you said that, my body went, yes, that is so deeply, profoundly true. And I was thinking along the same lines, but I used slightly different language when I thought to myself, well, first of all, it could almost summarize the top 5 reasons into one reason, being fear. Fear is so profound in anybody's difficulty in moving through into recovery, and denial will play out as an expression of fear. And I was thinking about the threshold we have to the discomfort of change. So when we might recognize there's some sort of problem, or we probably would benefit from making some changes to the way we're eating or living or moving, then comes up this experience of fear or discomfort around what it is that's going to be risked if we move forward in that way. And that is where denial will come in subconsciously, but to shut down that possibility and insist back to us, actually, you don't need to worry about that. Everything's fine. It's working. Plenty of other people are doing this. You're not that sick. Look at this person. They're worse off than you and they're fine, or whatever that rationale is. And it's almost like that Monty Python skit of you're all individuals and someone standing up saying I'm not, is with eating disorder recovery, everyone feeling like I'm not sick enough, and I can see other people have an issue, but I don't think my issue is that bad. And it's a protective mechanism, and it's important to understand it as that, because people can get really frustrated about denial in themselves, but also their loved ones around them can get really frustrated with that denial of what they see as the reality. But it is a protective mechanism, and it's because someone is deeply afraid of what that change will mean for them.
And I find this topic to be very relevant in women suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea in conjunction with an eating disorder. And I see that sometimes they do get the period back because they manage to nourish themselves properly. But yeah, that's just the beginning of the journey. And there are so many other components that they could deal with so they can really free themselves from disorder behaviors that are deeply ingrained, and yet they refuse to do so because they feel that they're not sick enough now that their menstrual cycle is working again. And I've seen that happening over and over and over, and that's really unfortunate because it's very important to celebrate the period coming back, and also the second one and the third one, but always ask yourself, do I still have behaviors around the way that I train? Do I still have behaviors, lingering behaviors, or uncomfortable thoughts around the way that I allow myself to be nourished, to feel nourished, and to nourish at the same time? So that's definitely our number one. What's another reasons why you see women not recovering?
Well, I thought what you mentioned as well in that point about denial being self-worth is really relevant to what I see as a second component as well, where I thought about it in terms of someone's ability to trust and to emotionally connect and to be vulnerable, because it's also very common that in the eating disorder experience, and part of why denial is invited in so easily, is that there's a distrust of maybe the agenda of those around us. There can be, because of the disconnect between what's going on in your body and even in your mental health and what you're perceiving, it can feel like an unreality of what other people are feeding back to you. Their level of concern might feel disproportionate to the risk as you see it, or you might come in and out of that awareness of there being risk. So it takes an enormous amount of trust in the people around you and a treatment team, that you could trust them more than what the eating disorder or the fear is telling you need to do. And to me, that feels really connected to the idea of self-worth and being able to emotionally be vulnerable and connect with others and share what you're thinking and feeling, because that's an act that takes so much trust. And in that terrain, we can unpack so much that will likely further progress recovery very significantly so. But I think there's almost an intuitive knowing that once we open that Pandora's box, where we're creating a really big change in the system we've come to rely on, that maybe it can't be undone. So there can be a real resistance to going there for what might come next.
Trusting is such a key component, and trusting on the self, so on ourself, and being able to actually recover. And I feel that lots of women come to this place telling themselves that they're not going to be able to fully recover, and so it feels like shooting themselves on the foot from the get-go. But also trusting, as you said, the professionals, and trusting the support net that is around you, and also trusting others in general to support you. So yeah, that's definitely tip number 2. And something else that I've been thinking of is not having a strong why, because I've noticed that lots of women come to this space once again because they want to get their period back, or they want to let go of some of the disorder behaviors. And whenever I jump on a clarity call with them, my first question is, why do you want to get the period back? Like, why is so important? And normally they say, I just want to feel healthy. I don't think that it's normal not to have a period. Yes, but why is that different for you? Like, how would your life change if you had that period? or if you could let go of the disorder behaviors. So not having a strong foundations of strong whys to come back to, I think that can really impact someone's journey. I don't want to generalize here, but I love working with women that wants to have a baby, for example, because they have a strong motivator. I know that sometimes it would be better if the strong motivator was coming from within us and deep inside of us, but sometimes that's unfortunately not the case. But normally women, when they want to get pregnant, they have this strong force that power them through. And it's a pleasure to see how they're willing to challenge their thoughts and really ingrain actions. But yeah, not having a strong why, I think that it's really coming in the way for most of the people that I've been working with. What about you, Jacqueline?
Absolutely. It's like there has to be a tipping point of there being more to lose, things staying as they are, than there is risk of them changing. And from the outside, we can often see for someone that there's so much that they could gain, there's so much potential, there's so much they're missing out on. But until that's intrinsically felt, that's often what came to mind when you were reflecting on that as well, is the often poorer statistics for younger populations going through eating disorders in recovery treatment. And I often wonder how related that is to the clarity of their why, because as a younger person, something like future fertility or having a baby might feel very far away and not an immediate consequence for what's going on. And the eating disorder behavior is best meeting their needs or numbing them or regulating them more effectively than other options that are available at the time. So sometimes even if it's treated, it might come back, and until there is something like that incredible drive, which having a baby, or I've also heard from people that might be realizing there's potential of losing a partner that is dearly important to them, or a job that is incredibly meaningful to them, where there's like another, it's almost like they get access to another engine within themselves that can propel through what the fear was holding them back from previously. As I was thinking about quality of life factors as well, and support networks for people, that when I start seeing somebody and they have these other parts of their life that are really important, it's comforting as a clinician, because I know there's going to be not just more support for them, but probably more tolerance translated from that in what they're able to sit through in the discomfort of change. Whereas when an eating disorder has become someone's whole life, and it really, the word entrenched can be used, and it really does feel like that, like structurally entrenched in the schema of that person's personality in their world. And I want to say with that, for anyone listening that identifies with that description, absolutely possible to still recover. And I have seen that happen more times than I can count. But it is certainly more easeful to move into that space with more quality of life factors.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree wholeheartedly. I actually had an appointment with a beautiful client this morning. She's past the age of 50, and she never took the recovery journey seriously because she was never really invited to do so from different medical professionals. And after feeding her body properly for a couple of months now, she told me that for the very first time in 25 years, she's not been experiencing brain fog. And she's never made a connection about how much the estrogen level in our body actually impact our brain performance. And we never really talk enough about how the eating disorder is really impacting our overall health. Yes, we all know that we lose a period and the ability of getting pregnant. There is so much talk about bone health, and women under the age of 22, under the age of 22 suffering from osteopenia and osteoporosis. But if we start talking about the cardiovascular impact, and also the high percentage of women suffering from Parkinson and dementia after the age of 45 because of an eating disorder, that to me, it's an incredible wake-up call, but we are not educated enough on the side effects of having a prolonged, not even that prolonged experience with an eating disorder, because unfortunately our body it's very quick in accommodating bad behaviors, and we tend to pay the consequences in a very short time, let's say. There is something that came to my mind now that could be one of the reasons why women don't recover, and it's age, feeling too old. But is there anything else that you would like to address before we get into that topic?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder if also, just to what I was saying earlier, but the being too young as well would be interesting to talk about with that. The other main theme that was there for me was around trauma and emotional dysregulation, also making recovery more complex, and the signal essentially of what's coming back when you meet discomfort, which could come from change, it could come from weight restoration, it could come from changing nutrition patterns or decreasing movement. That's very likely to be uncomfortable emotionally for anyone moving through this space. And what your skill set is within that, what your temperament is around that, can be a huge factor in how well tolerated it is. And if you're able to move forward overarchingly, no one moves forward in a linear fashion. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but overall make progress, or whether that's so halting and even traumatizing or re-traumatizing that something else happens. And that can almost be, it can be like someone gripping back onto disordered eating patterns or compulsive exercising, like a child having a comfort blanket pulled out of their clutch, and they sort of reach back and grip onto it, more almost like separation anxiety response to the eating disorder. And that could happen with untreated trauma. And in neurodiversity, brains do emotional regulation differently as well. So we all do have slightly different thresholds and temperaments for how we actually experience emotion, and what our brain tells us about the emotions we're having. That can have a really big play out in recovery.
Yeah, and I'm here also to acknowledge that an eating disorder can feel very safe, at least temporarily. And like you said, it's like that safety blanket. But I think that I've also described this feeling before, but it's like being on a cold winter night and you have this safety blanket that doesn't matter how strong you pull it, it never covers your feet, and you're still freezing at the end of the day. But if you don't have any other strategies or any other coping mechanism to rely back on, that's the safety blankets is your go-to, which is why also finding someone that can support you through the journey can make not only shortcut the process, but makes a world of a difference. And I know that we have already covered 4 of the top 5 reasons, and I knew that we were gonna get to way more than them. And I really would like to touch base very quickly with the age factor, because I think that it's really important. Some of the women that feel too old to recover, and there is no such a thing of being too old or being too young, because an eating disorder doesn't really discriminate. And the more that you allow the eating disorder to feed on your beautiful brain and to take advantage of your incredible body, the harder it's gonna be to let it go and to create a new fulfilling life. Would you agree with me on this one, Jacqueline?
Absolutely. And I think as well, we've done such a disservice in misrepresenting what eating disorders look like, with typifying younger women, teenage girls, often from privileged backgrounds, often white in race. And when someone fits outside of that, they can risk misdiagnosis or are underdiagnosed, but also eliminate or dismiss themselves because they feel embarrassed. That maybe, I've definitely heard people say that to me, like, this is something teenage girls go through, and I'm in my 40s or in my 50s, but it's not something just teenage girls go through. And onset can start at any age. I've worked with people who've had onset in their 80s of an eating disorder. It can start in middle age. It more commonly does start in between 15 and 24, but by no means always. And it can also start then and reoccur or be enduring from that period of time in someone's life. And it's always worth addressing. If your life could be improved, like any other health condition, it deserves to be addressed fulsomely.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed reading the articles from the New York Times last week. They were talking about women that suffer from a typical anorexia. I don't know if you had the chance to read through the article, but once again, it was going against the belief that every woman that is suffering from an eating disorder needs to be in a smaller body and needs to be Caucasian and from a very wealthy family. That's absolutely not the case. And unfortunately, it's very well known by now that little girls and little boys can start dieting from a very young age of 5, and they can show also distressful attitude towards their body and self from the age of 5 and 6. So definitely the eating disorder, as I said before, doesn't discriminate. It's never too early or too late to treat it, and it can be recurring in life, and that's absolutely normal. It's also it depends on how we respond to trauma in general and how we get triggered by challenges in life. So having that, once again, the support net or that professional that it's on your phone that you can call whenever you feel that tickle coming back, it's like, I always think about an eating disorder like a skin disease. The skin disease can really take over, like eczema that you can see everywhere around your body, but sometimes they have a flare and then they go in remission. And when you feel that tickle coming back, that's the time for you to actually get on top of the supplements, get on top of the nutrition, speak with a counselor so that the eczema doesn't have a proper flare again. I know that possibly is not the best metaphor, but that's how I've seen it in the past, and it does help my OCD brain. And I think that last but not least, which should have been the top one out of the top 6, not seeking support. I think that's the biggest one. And I know that, nutrition and dietetic clinician, clinical psychotherapist, we're 2 professionals that work in that industry and for many years as well. So we've seen so many people, so many women struggling with period problems and with disorder behaviors and eating disorders that have been describing themselves as not being sick enough. And we know the difference from one client that seeks support and stick to it compared to someone else that decide to do it on its own or just go to the first or maybe second session to then disappear and come back 1 year later asking for extra support, basically. So support is a big one. Would you like to describe what support can look like from your perspective?
I would say it's very unlikely someone could completely recover without professional support, and we wouldn't expect ourselves to with any other major illness, physical or mental health wise. Why do we put this pressure on ourselves in this regard? But it's the single most important thing you could do, because what I find as well is people make so many assumptions about what they can't do or why recovery won't be possible for them that might be based on misinformation. It's at least coming to explore what the possibilities could look like. And if you've tried treatment before and it hasn't been helpful, there's so many different ways of approaching it, so many different personalities that you might be a better fit with. Please reach out again and keep exhausting that avenue. The US clinician Carolyn Costin, specializes in eating disorders, said, "No one hasn't recovered that keeps trying." And while that's a bit controversial, I think the seed of that idea is that if you keep reaching out and you keep resourcing yourself, you're so likely to cross paths with the right fit of treatment for you.
And what does support look like? It could be to have a nutritionist or a dietitian on your side. It could be having a counselor or a psychotherapist on your side. It could be being part of a group that really support you and gives you the right information. But it's also important to look for a very customized approach, because unfortunately we are not made with a cookie cutter. We don't come with instructions. And we are also very different, especially in this journey. And it's also important to find that accountability that keeps the level of motivation when, excuse my French, shit hits the fan. Because at some point during the recovery journey, it's bound to happen, and it's very important to acknowledge it and to have someone to, as I said before, to support you while you go through the sticky bit of the journey. All righty. So Jacqueline, once again, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I'm gonna leave all the information so where people can find you. I enjoyed this live tremendously, maybe because it's a topic that is so very close to my heart. And thank you so very much for being here today.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation as well.
Fantastic. So I will see Jacqueline for our last live of this year of 2022. So we have already done 10 lives. I think that we missed 2, one because I was on holiday and one because of COVID. So we did pretty well, I shall say. So we will see you next month with the last topic for 2022. And this is just a reminder, it's November 2022. So if you started the year telling yourself, this is the year that I'm gonna get my period back, and I'm gonna let go of restriction, and I'm gonna let go of disorder behaviors, 11 months have gone past. So don't be in denial and reach out. You could start by simply leaving a comment to this video, or simply booking a clarity call with myself or with Jacqueline. And we love you and leave you all. Bye for now.